Welcome everyone to episode 13 of Developer Dialogue. I'm your host, Jean, the Strategy Wargamer, and I'm going solo today, and we have a special guest. We have Vic from VR Designs. You might have heard of this studio. These guys are the ones responsible for the successful and just wildly incredible game, Shadow Empire, that released not too long ago. I believe it was fall of 2020. That released. Welcome, Vic. How are you doing?
Hi. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Now that I have you on the show, I'm really eager to kind of pick your brain because, I mean, following the release of Shadow Empire and how awesome it is, and I was mentioning before the show that I was listening to Slytherin's latest announcements that they made, and I believe the second game that they announced was Decisive Campaigns Ardennes Offensive, and I was just blown away by the gameplay and just how awesome it looked. And they mentioned this is Vic from VR Designs. I'm like, no way, this can't be. I'm like, Vic that did Shadow Empire is already in the process of doing a whole nother game, and the game looks like it's been worked on for quite a while. So I was just kind of blown away. Were you working on two games at the same time? I gotta ask, because if you are, then I gotta ask another question. Are you a machine, or are you just that dedicated?
Well, Jean, over here at VR Designs, we are a very big studio. We can multitask on several projects at the same time. It's a question of allocating human resources and manpower to the right projects. No, I'm kidding. As you know, I work alone. I'm the only developer who works for me. Listen, Shadow Empire has been in development for, I guess, almost over 4 years, at least, before it was released in June. And it was a very long process to get to the end, and it was not always easy. So whenever I felt down or couldn't get my energy level high up enough for Shadow Empire, I switched projects and worked on Decisive Campaigns 4. So I guess maybe I worked a week for 4 years on Decisive Campaigns 4. And I teamed up with an Italian guy called David Gambina, who has been doing all the scenario design and all the historical research. So as you see, I actually already worked on it for a long time, and I got some help at the same time. So that's explaining why it seems that I'm a robot, which I'm not.
Yeah, I was just really shocked by that because this game I played defensive campaigns. I'm kind of a noob at it, but there seems to be I played a Barbarossa, and there seems to be so much depth, information. I mean, that game just kind of blew me away. I actually played it for the first time today, and it was just literally blew my mind. And I was just thinking, I'm like, how in the world did he do this with the other one? Which again, Shadow Empire, you're still supporting it. I believe I mentioned before the show you just added Air Forces, I believe, to it.
That was with the Steam launch. So that was the 3rd of December. And I think we have done over 20 beta patches and 2 or 3 official ones, which group all the beta patches in one actually easy patch to do for the people who are not following every open beta release. And we added some features. We improved AI time, and we fixed a lot of small issues. One interesting feature that has been added to Shadow Empire is I added something called scrap cards, or scrap stratagems, I should say, which is quite original because it allows you to scrap your stratagems, get scrap points, and then use these scrap points to buy new stratagems, but special stratagems called crap stratagems, and these ones are procedurally generated, so you don't know what kind of card you're going to get, what kind of stratagem you're going to get. I keep saying card because, in fact, the same mechanic in Decisive Campaigns 4, I call them cards. So it's cards in Decisive Campaigns 4, and it's stratagems in Shadow Empire. I should keep them separated in my mind. Yeah, they're the same thing though, so it's hard to keep them separated.
But before we go any further, I wanted to ask, can you give us like an elevator pitch of this upcoming game, Decisive Campaigns Ardennes Offensive?
Yeah, maybe I'm going to disappoint you a bit.
It's fine. Just for people that are not very familiar with Decisive Campaigns or are not familiar with the latest announcement.
No, but if I got you right, you just played Decisive Campaigns Barbarossa, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not the other two. You jumped in at number 3.
No. Yeah.
Well, so number 4 is completely different from number 3. You basically played the wrong game. It's much more similar to number 2, which is called Decisive Campaigns Case Blue. It's much more similar to that title. Because, in fact, the Decisive Campaigns series, every game is sort of different. And especially Decisive Campaigns 3 is different because there I teamed up with an Australian guy named Cameron Harris, who basically spent an enormous amount of time designing and creating all the little role-playing aspects and all the interactive fiction you have with especially the German High Command. So all that RPGishness and interactive fiction is not present in Ardennes. Ardennes is really a straight up counter and hexagon war game with minimal with minimal role playing aspects and large blurbs of text. It's really a combat oriented game. So in that sense it's quite different from Barbarossa or Shadow Empire, because Shadow Empire continued a bit in the same vein as Decisive Campaigns 3. So in fact with Decisive Campaigns 4 we're going a bit in another direction. I hope you're not disappointed, because if you were looking forward to more, like role playing with superior officers, it ain't there. There's a lot of other stuff there, but it's a different kind of game than the previous Decisive Campaigns.
Yeah, I really love I'll be honest, I really love the role-playing aspect of it. But the tactical side of it has a lot that I'm hoping it comes into Ardennes Offensive as well. I would say the biggest thing, at least for me, would be the supply system. Because one of the big things I noticed in Barbarossa was how critical fuel is, right? So I believe there were 3 army groups, and I was going to move one entire panzer group from one end of the battlefield to the other, and I realized just moving one division would take up a third of my fuel in that region. So I was just like, okay, I'm probably not going to be able to do this, move an entire group that quick. I just found it really interesting because a lot of games, they do some kind of supply system, but it's not as in depth. Can you dive a little into
Sure,
into that kind of system, how it differentiates itself from other kind of traditional strategy games?
Sure. I'm not up to date with every other strategy game, so I guess there must be games who are even more in depth supply wise than mine. Maybe War in the East or something. I never got very far into that game though, I have to be honest. But I can imagine it actually has an even more complicated system. And actually, in Decisive Campaigns 4, it's not so complicated. I think it's actually I'm getting more and more where I want to be design-wise in having a system that's less complicated, but actually maybe in a sense more deep and more interesting to play around with. Basically, in DC4, you have supply sources which are located on the edge of the map. Though they can be anywhere, but it's most logical they're at the edge of the map because the scale of Decisive Campaigns 4 is at 1 kilometer a hex. So usually you're playing in a relatively small area. The largest scenario is an area of maybe 200 kilometers by 150 kilometers, and most scenarios are like way smaller, like maybe 50 by 50 kilometers. So it's logical supply is coming off the edge of the map, and it's not somewhere actually on the map being produced in a factory or something. So anyway, supply sources at the edge of the map, and from there they enter your road system, and for example, like highways and sealed roads, they allow the supply to travel very far, reach units on the other side of the map with ease, but there's also like secondary roads and dirt roads, and those they limit the distance your supplies can travel. There's some exceptions here. You can put a logistical like a supply dump, which will help extend the range of your supply source. So you can play around with that. But basically, it's a system where distance and road quality determines how well a unit is supplied. And the interesting thing, I think, concerning supply systems and DC4 is that since there's no hex ownership, you do not exactly know where the enemy is. And for example, roads could be cut by enemy forces, and you will only discover this the next turn when you see your supplies are not arriving or only partially arriving because one of your main roads or something like this has been blocked. Even if there's multiple roads leading to the front, imagine one of them is cut and the other one is still open. And there's another thing in Decisive Campaigns 4 which is called traffic rules, which means that a maximum amount of traffic can go over a road before penalties are incurred. So if one of the roads is cut, only one road is left, too much supply is traveling over one road, so it's getting penalties as well, and less supplies will be arriving. Not to talk about any units will want to use the same road after the units have been supplied. It's becoming a huge traffic jam and nothing is going one way or the other. So just a short sketch. Supply system. I think what's interesting in this new title is exactly this: the lack of hex ownership has a profound effect on protecting your supply lines, and the traffic rules as well. Just having one dirt road is not enough to supply a whole army corps. You need to have a good road, and so a lot of rules that had been abstracted, for example, in Decisive Campaigns 3 Barbarossa, in text reports and decisions, they in a sense they've become core rules of the engine in Decisive Campaigns 4. I'm going to do a break here and let you respond.
I'm kind of. To me, that's very exciting. I could just like visualize that, where like the roads all get jam packed. I guess I'm thinking of this scene from Battle of the Bulge, the movie. I'm kind of curious. Can weather affect the road conditions?
Yes. Of course. I still have to work a bit on because as you know, it's not yet finished. So I'm still putting the dots on the I's and the J's. Yes, mud is, for example, not a lot of people know this, but actually the Ardennes is not the battle for the Bulge is not all snow, especially up to the encirclement of Bastogne. There was not a lot of snow, and there was mostly some unexpected mud and stuff, and which was causing a lot of movement problems. But snow as well, I have to just find a system where I want to add a system where if the turn snow falls, it gives a penalty on road movement, and then we presume it's getting cleared by snow plows and stuff. and then the penalty reduces afterwards. But mud is the worst, because the Ardennes is a very rural region. There's not a lot of sealed roads, there's a lot of dirt roads, and the moment they change to mud roads, it plays havoc also on your supply system. And once you get into it and keep a history book of the German progress next to you, you'll discover a lot of things, because the weather is historical, right? So you can see when you're slowing down, a lot of slowdowns, German slowdowns, are also explained by the weather, actually.
With the roads, I'm kind of curious. Is there a way that I can maintain the roads? You were mentioning, I think, snow plows, but are there ways that I can provide maintenance for the roads to ensure better supply management?
No, there's no road management in Decisive Campaigns 4. The only thing you can do is build supply bases. And these actually cost, if you build them, you're diverting supplies from your units to these supply bases. But after these supply bases have been filled up to their required amount of supply points, they function as giving an extender in range to any supply stream that passes through them coming from a supply source. So they act as range extenders, and you can have multiple in a sequence. And they're a bit over the top for the small scenarios, even maybe for the campaign scenario, but I wanted to already have them in there for any possible future titles, because I think the combination of supply sources and these supply bases, it sort of works well. It feels organic, it feels historical in a way, and it gives the choice also, because you can also use to cannibalize the supplies in these supply bases, but at that moment you start actually, I'm called eating, but it's like ammunition and stuff, right? The moment you start eating your supply bases, they cease giving this range extension to the supply sources. So you have to choose, either you consume what's in it, or you keep a stockpile there, and at that moment they serve as a range extender for the source. And having these also enables the Germans, who are desperately short on oil especially, to capture the American supply bases before they can be depleted or destroyed, and get that much needed extra fuel that they don't have themselves.
Oh wow, okay. So basically, almost the exact kind of scene straight from the movie, where you have the Allies, trying to destroy the fuel before the German columns get there.
Right, exactly. You have some cliches. I thought they had to be in there. Yeah. I feel people are disappointed if stuff like that is not in there. I feel I would be a bit disappointed myself, I guess. If I would play my game and there's no supply base I can capture. I don't know. It's a bulge game, so there has to be capturing oil supplies. It has to be in there, like Tiger tanks, right? The Tiger II. It will change the course of war. We have 40 Tiger IIs. Everything. We will win this war with this battalion of tanks. It has to be in there. It's it's iconic.
I mean, that's really exciting, because if I'm playing a German player, I would definitely go for the supply bases.
Well, it's very hard, because they can be depleted. Just sending the American player he knows what's coming, so he's going any supply base which is likely to be captured, because he knows how the battle is going to go. Right, it's a historical game, so he's going to put those bases on deplete. And the supplies and fuel are going to be sent back to the supply source. However, because that will be too easy, so it takes time to deplete it. I don't know. It takes, if it's a big supply base, it takes maybe 10 or 16 turns to completely send everything back. So the Germans have time to capture part of the supplies. And the American can also speed it up by actually destroying his supplies instead of sending them back.
Wow, okay.
But the most important thing, Jean, is the most important thing about this system is actually that it's a good system that's in a sense generic, because DC4 is going to ship with actual usable editor by a lot of people. So I hope to finally see actually some scenario design from the community, which I've never really seen with DC1, DC2, nor DC3. There have been some rare individuals who have managed to do something, but especially with DC3, everything was way too complicated to modify. So here we have a system that's, I think, easy to work with and create your own scenarios with, and that gives you like a deep logistical, a relatively deep logistical simulation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
It has already been designed with editing in mind, because DC3 was basically uneditable. Shadow Empire is basically uneditable. I'm going to try to open it up a bit, but that's a different story. It will be very limited. So I wanted to go back to giving this sense of freedom of design to players who have an itch to create their own scenarios, and that's back in DC4.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important, especially having the community kind of integrate and add scenarios. I've never had that kind of yearning, I guess, in Shadow Empire, because it's very sandbox, and I really like starting from...
Exactly,
yeah, because I really love starting from like scratch. It's kind of like a civilization kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I can imagine people making like really cool scenarios, like maybe focusing on the 101st Easy Company, kind of like Band of Brothers kind of moments kind of thing. But one thing I wanted to ask you is, since you were talking about how like terrains are not going to be owned, and that I remember doing my research on the game, and it was said something about like troops can infiltrate my lines. So as soon as I saw that, I pictured again from Battle of the Bulge, those German-speaking, English-speaking German troops, right? Kind of fouling up my lines. Would I be able to, as like the German player, utilize those troops to maybe capture supply lines or wreak havoc inside the Allies' zone of control?
Of course you are. No, that's another example of an iconic element of the Battle for the Bulge. They called, I think in the game they called Greif teams. Operation Greif, I think, was the official code name of these guys. And basically it works in combination. It combines a card with an actual unit. So you get a card to deploy a Greif force, which allows you to actually put a real unit on the map, but behind enemy lines up to a certain range. So they have a small jump, simulating that presumably they managed to talk themselves through the front line. So they start maybe 5 or 10 hexes behind the American front line, and there they'll act as a normal unit. So they can do combat, and they're very weak, but they can occupy, for example, a vital crossroad and disrupt supplies to a large part of the American order of battle. In theory, they could even blow or occupy a bridge or a major victory point. But they will never last long. I mean, we're talking about a couple of dozen of guys here with a few captured jeeps. They have very little actual combat value.
Yeah, but they can cause some... blowing up that bridge sounds really good.
Well, it's possible, but I'm not sure it actually... It was not their purpose to blow up bridges, actually. I mean, it was more that maybe the purpose to secure a bridge, but blowing them up wouldn't help the German advance, right?
That's true, yeah.
I mean...
But if Patton's coming my way, I'm going to blow up some bridges.
Right. I don't think they were sent in that direction of the front, but I hear you. Yeah, you're free to do with them what you want. And the thing I think is a compliment, an auto compliment to my engine, it is that all the rules work well together. I'm really happy with that. So, and a very small tactical superior move can have huge consequences. So even these tiny units, just because they start behind the front line, they can really be a game changer. Just occupying that one crossroad and blocking supplies for 1 or 2 rounds, it can put everything upside down. And it's always a puzzle. The allied player will be like, yeah, is there a Greif team deployed behind my lines? I don't see anything, but that doesn't mean there ain't any. So there's this actually this sort of historical sense of paranoia, like, how many are there? Could I find them all? I'm going to keep troops behind the line, just in case. It's what you're going to keep behind the line is out of proportion with the actual danger. I like this sort of sense of emerging drama from a very little thing.
Yeah, knowing me, I'll probably be the one putting soldiers behind the lines to deal with those guys. Because I'll be a little bit paranoid to see where are they. I'm kind of curious. So, in regards to decisions, the decisions in PC4 in Ardennes Offensive, how would they be different from PZ from the Barbarossa game? Will I be able to communicate with commanders like Eisenhower or corps commanders? Will I be able to request more supplies, airdrops, things like that?
No, there's no role playing like the chain of command. However, you do have a set of there's a lot of card use in the game, so you do have a set of cards, both a set of global cards as a set of cards per commander. And the global cards, they allow you, for example, to get extra troops, extra fuel, extra supplies, even extra units.
Oh, no.
And air missions and stuff, because air has been abstracted into cards. Seeing the scale of the game, I don't want to have actual air units on airfields on the map. And all the commanders, they have their own set of cards. Each commander has his own set of cards, which is, in theory, sort of historically appropriate. Though it's hard to judge the character of every commander, because some of them are just, well, there's not much actually known about them, or we don't have the time to read a full biography on every commander. The point is that they each have their set of hand cards, which can improve for example, the range of some of their units, or the offensive power of their units, or their defensive or their entrenchment. They can basically play cards on their units which give a modifier, which can be light up to quite heavy, depending on the quality of the officer in a certain domain. Because there's actually a little bit of role playing. It's just the numbers. There's not like the text of the interactive fiction of Barbarossa, but the numbers are there. Like each officer has 5. He has like a score for audacity, for determination, for charisma, for intuition, and for organization. And their cards, the cards officers can have, correspond with these statistics. And if he's very good, for example, he has a high audacity, it means he can really raise the offensive value of units. But it's temporary, these cards, right? So it's for one turn, and you deplete the points this officer has, and he has to regain the points over a couple of turns. If he's good, it can take up to 10 or 15 turns if he's lousy, and then he can play another card. But just, a bonus of 50% to maybe one regiment of his division at the right moment, it can make the difference. Or just 40 action points more can just make the difference to make it over the bridge instead of to stop before the bridge, seeing it blown up and lose the game. And these cards are present with division commanders as well as with corps and army commanders. And especially on the higher level, they function a bit different. like the higher commanders, like their cards enable them to visit lower headquarters and provide a bonus to all units. Of, for example, like a corps commander can visit the division, and it will give a bonus to all units in this division. Where a division commander, he can visit a certain regiment or a certain battalion. It will give a bonus only to that unit. Obviously, the more units are touched, the lower the effect is. Anyway, there's cards for officers and like global cards, but forget about it's really a different beast from Barbarossa.
And one thing that I've noticed that it's very different is with Barbarossa, like when I was fighting, I'm dealing with 3-4 divisions attacking 2 or 3 other divisions on the opposing side. Going from that level to more of a battalion level kind of game, what kind of changes have you had to make in regards to combat for this transition?
A lot. Actually, I didn't prepare a list, but trust me, there's been many small changes, and I want to give you the most important ones, which I feel are the most important, and I think it has to do with recon.
Oh, cool.
I think that's an important one.
I remember you mentioning that recon is more important now than ever.
Well, for starters, with the change of the skill, I also added line of sight. It's a bit fuzzy because I felt like it's not a tactical game either, but it is basically line of sight. So meaning that a forest or a hill can block recon points. If it's beautiful weather, clear sky, a unit can maybe see up to 12-14 hexes away, giving you a much larger field of vision as in Barbarossa, where the hex scale is maybe 40 kilometers. Normally in Barbarossa you only see 1-2 hexes away and then it stops. You can see quite far. However,
oh cool.
First of all, there are not that many clear days, especially at the start. And second, there is the line of sight, so you cannot see through a forest, and you cannot see through a hill or a ridge or a mountain. So this doesn't change combat. This changes like how you're going to move your units. It's going to change your operational strategy. The moment units actually clash with each other, the big change is that, first of all, you can do a normal attack trying to capture the hex, like you've done in Barbarossa as well. But here you can also order a ranged attack, not only with artillery, which artillery is basically an indirect ranged attack, because artillery doesn't need to actually see its target. It just needs somebody to tell it coordinates to fire on. But there's also ranged fire now. So, for example, your tanks, they do not have to actually enter the hex. They can stay where they are and fire into the hex.
Nice.
Which is ranged fire.
Do I need to see the enemy? Like with if I'm doing like indirect fire with artillery, and if I'm suspicious that our enemy in that forest over there, can I just fire on that forest without actually having to see the enemy? Yeah,
that's I changed that as well. So you can fire blind as well, like full blind, like no clue if there's a unit in a hex. You can fire on the hex.
Oh man,
you have no clue if you've killed anything though. Usually,
that's exciting. Wow.
Almost always. I think there's some exception rule there. If you have some recon points and you blow something up, you have a chance you see. So imagine you fire 10 kilometers away. You have no vision on the hex you're firing on. You will never know if you've hit anything. But if you have a little bit of vision on a hex, it is possible if you hit something that the soldiers will have some vision on this hex. They actually see an explosion or something happening that indicates you scored a hit. That's just a tiny example of the kind of rule changes I've been doing around recon. Same thing if you actually start a battle. only the because every unit in decisive campaigns is consists of troops, which consists of individuals, basically, I should say. So, if, for example, you have a battalion unit of 800 troops, it actually consists of 80 individual squads, which in combat are simulated as a single sort of subunit. With the new recon rules, if you attack into a hex in which you have little recon, you will only see the enemy troops where you can actually see, and the rest will appear during combat. And recon is actually now, or the lack of recon is actually something that helps the defender. So there's an ambush aspect. If you're well covered, you'll defend better, because it will take the enemy time to find you, and the moment they find you, they will take fire, but at a disadvantage.
Wow. So I'm curious, because like one of the features that you mentioned, I think in the previous announcement, something regarding Intercept Fire. I think it was something with...
right. No, right, you are Intercept Fire, because that is a major change. Basically, Intercept Fire is ranged fire, but it's not given in your actual turn, it's given by your troops in the enemy's turn. So the moment the enemy is moving and he moves into range of one of your units, which has saved up some of its action points, it moved less than it could your previous turn, this unit, if it has standing orders which allow it to do so, it can open intercept fire on the enemy unit trying to move closer towards you. And at that moment there's a couple of turns of ranged fire, which will either cause some casualties in the enemy unit and or make it lose some extra action points and to slow down its advance. It provides an enormous sense of dynamism, of like a dynamic game. It completely changed for me the experience compared to the previous Decisive Campaigns games. As now, when I'm playing DC4, I'm always a little bit on edge. I'm always like, yeah, I could move there, but will it work or will I make it? First, there's like, if I move there, will I be ambushed? Will I be taking intercept fire? And even worse, like I see an opportunity, like maybe 4 hexes away, and I'm like, can I actually make it there, or will I take intercept fire en route and lose enough action points to not make to the destination I wanted to get, and for example leave my panzers open exposed in a field for the next turn to be taken out by an airstrike. Anyway, I think it's a game changer, the intercept fire, because stuff is happening during your turn. The enemy is reacting during the turn you're playing, and I think it's not an innovation, right? I mean, it's a well-known concept, but it just works very well in the Decisive Campaigns engine.
Yeah, and another thing that I wanted to ask you was, since you were mentioning attacks, was you're doing something different in this than at least the game that I was playing previously, which is I think you have like a probe attack and then there's a all-out attack. Can you kind of like dive into that?
Yeah, basically the all-out attack is you're taking more casualties in exchange for better performance, for taking out more enemy troops. But let's say this way, you could take, if you do a normal attack, it might take you 2 or 3 rounds to take your objective, and you might lose, say, 100 troops doing this. If you use the all-out attack, you might even take the hex in 1 round, but it might cost you 3 or 4 times as many losses. So basically, you're improving the odds, but you're increasing the butcher's bill. And the probe attack is basically doing the reverse. It's like they're very cautious, and it's basically a way to get more recon on the hex by actually going in there, firing some shots, and quickly retreating, and not taking a lot of risk and damage, but not doing a lot of damage either. But getting recon on the hex, which can be used, for example, afterwards to fire artillery rounds into it.
Okay.
And there's even the recon in force, which is sort of like in between. It's like, okay, well, maybe if the enemy force is smaller than expected, we could actually take the hex. Why not? You know, we're doing a recon mission, but if there's no resistance, no real resistance, let's keep moving.
Wow. And so what would be like the smallest unit in the game? You mentioned battalion, but are there units smaller than battalion?
Yeah, I think there's some companies also.
So hero companies like Easy Company?
No, I don't think so. No, if there's any companies, there must be like some special equipment like tanks or like anti-aircraft guns or like plain standard regimental infantry, that they'll always be in a battalion-sized unit.
Okay. The other thing I want to kind of go over was I'm very interested in the weather, because I believe weather had a pivotal contribution to that battle. You mentioned that there are going to be 5 different hex states in the game. Besides snow, what other kind of, I'm assuming rain would be another one, but what other kind of hex states would they be? And how do they like affect my troops? Like, I'm assuming snow is going to have an adverse reaction to the soldiers' morale, but what other effects can it have?
Well, before I answer that question, I'd like to add one thing on the Easy Company. You mentioned before, so there's no Easy Company in the game. However, it is possible to form your own, and that's quite a unique feature. It's possible to form your own battle groups, or if you play the Germans, your own Kampfgruppe. And these are you're basically completely free how to name them and what to put inside of them.
Wow.
And it can be very useful if you do not have enough units in a certain area to do all the tasks that are necessary. For example, you have 1 unit and 2 bridges to defend. You can split off a battle group from 1 unit, send it to bridge A, and keep the original unit at bridge B.
Wow, that's really exciting. So I can name them too.
Yeah, they'll get a custom name the moment they're created, like something random, like Kampfgruppe Steiner or Kampfgruppe Willis, Battlegroup Willis, Kampfgruppe Steiner, but you can rename them however you want.
One other question that I had was, so we were talking about supply earlier. Now, if I have let's say a battalion or a company, does my battalion have to go from one end of the map to another by foot, or can I use like other transportation? Like, can I attach trucks to them and have them get there quicker?
Yes. Having said that, like almost all the American troops are motorized organically, so they don't have need for transport because they're all already mobile.
Oh, okay, cool.
The Germans, however, is a different case. They have a lot of foot infantry, and for sure, I added also features which are almost. It's a bit like the Intercept Fire. It feels a bit like a tactical game, and putting 1 unit on top of a truck unit to drive it around the map. It also feels like almost a bit tactical, and that's the fun part I think about this skill, like this 1 kilometer per hex and 6 hours per day skill. It brings some of the fun of a tactical game, but it stays an operational game. So to be completely clear on your question, yes, you can have special truck units, and they can transport other units. And on top of that, like, you can choose if unit is in march mode or in combat mode. And if it's in march mode, it basically has double the range it has in combat mode, at the price of being more vulnerable to any unexpected intercept fire.
Oh, okay. That's pretty cool. I like that.
And you forgot your weather state question.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to give the impression I'm deflecting that one. I thought about deflecting it, but it's not my style to deflect questions because I have to look up the snow rules there. I'm not 100% sure I will give you the correct information if I improvise right now. But in fact, in a way, I wanted to say something about the weather though. I think the most important effect that's possible is rain and mud and snow melting to more water and causing unsealed roads to become basically quagmires and slow everything down. That is not, even if it's completely mechanized, it slows down in mud landscapes. But the most important thing for me, in a way, with these weather states, was to create also a sense of immersion. And I assure you that they have the correct modifiers and stuff. And if they don't, we'll make a patch and they will have the correct modifiers. But for me, the modifiers were not the most important with the weather states. The sense of immersion they can give, I found the most interesting, and that's why I created quite a lot of them. So, for example, take a hex of farmland or whatever. It can be in a regular state. It can be in a frozen state, which will show it slightly different. It will be like it's slightly frosted, like if you're making a morning walk and it's been freezing during the night. You see all these little, everything is like sort of like sprayed over with white paint, but there's no snow. It's frosted. Then you can actually have snow falling down, and it becomes like a snow landscape. But it can also start, the temperature can get above zero again, and the snow can start melting. At that point, you get like a hex with half melted snow. There will be some piles of snow left and some mud in between. But then it also can start freezing again. And then this half snow landscape gets a frosting over it, and it becomes like a frozen half snow landscape. And like this, there's about 6 different states, but they're quite detailed.
Wow.
And they're like I did like nice landscape illustrations to show them off. And I think it works quite well. Because everything is rendered sort of like layer based. So there's also, because there's 4 rounds in a turn, you have like a morning turn, a day turn, and a like an evening turn and a night turn, and it gives every turn the combination of the daytime and the weather type, the weather state, and the temperature. It gives a special feeling to every turn, and you have to try it when we got a demo ready for you to play. But I will be interested to see if it works out as I wanted it to.
Yeah, I think it's going to. That sounds like mine. I mean, that's like blowing my mind, honestly. Like I can't wait. I really am excited how you're incorporating like weather so much into this game. And so many different states of snow and ice and stuff like that affecting units. That's very immersive, I think, in my opinion.
What I forgot to say about the weather and stuff, it's 2 huge impacts, of course, and that's visibility and American air power. Anything cloudy diminishes hugely the efficiency of the American air power, and a clear day will bring havoc on the German tanks.
So I would have to like put my tanks in like covered terrain during like clear days. That would be the ideal for a strategy for the player to kind of keep an eye on that weather, because the moment it gets clear, make sure your units are covered, basically, right?
Haha, yes, but keep in mind, like after the 24th, there's about five days of clear weather. You know, if you're going to park all your panzers in the forest, how are you going to make it?
That's true. That's a good point.
To your objective. But however, you can switch off historical weather.
Oh.
So you can put it on random weather. And honestly,
that's awesome.
I think that's more fun to play with. But
oh yeah, because weather's unpredictable, especially back then.
Well, you know, it's nice to play history, but to make an exact repetition, it's not much fun to, you know, you cannot park your panzers in the forest because you have to make it to the Meuse, to the river. But you cannot make it to the river with clear weather because your tanks will be destroyed. Poof. It's nice to have a chance to have a bit more luck with the weather than the Germans had, right? It's fun to have like, it's raining. Yes. Go.
I really like that thing of unpredictability right there, because you never know.
Right, you are.
One big question I had for you is Decisive Campaigns is over a decade old. How different is this game series from the original to the upcoming Ardennes Offensive? Is it like a night and day kind of difference?
I think it's a slow evolution. I have a big tendency to build new games on top of previous games. I mean, I never did otherwise, actually. So I'm not sure other developers are doing this. Might be a personal tick, but I add a lot of new code, and some code gets retired. You know, some code gets sent to the retirement home. Some code is still in there that has been maybe written in 2002 or something. So I keep using the same code base and churning it around, adding, modding, improving. I think it's one of the reasons I can be relatively quick as well, and have quite deep gameplay, without having to spend 4 years or 5 years on every game I make. You know, like Shadow Empire, it took me over 4 years to get it to release. Imagine I had to do everything from scratch. Might have been 6 years, you know. So, might have been more pretty as well, maybe, or a little bit faster. As for your specific question on the DC series, DC4 is really, where DC3 still, hex and counter-wise, it feels a bit like DC2 or DC1. Here, DC4 really feels different, and I changed all the graphics for all the troops.
Oh, wow.
For all the counters, for almost all the landscapes, for the interface. It will give a new feel to the Decisive Campaigns game. So I'm looking forward to getting it to release, but there's still a bit of work to do. Still finishing up the interface, and I want to take a good moment to finish up the AI, which is already very good. But I want to test it properly with beta testers against, especially in the larger scenarios. I'm a bit afraid it will not hold up if it has to play for 60 turns and get, for example, pattern from one side of the map to the other. So there's that. There's some interface work and artificial intelligence work left, but getting really close.
Regarding the future of the Decisive Campaigns series, how do you plan to expand the series? And if so, what other theaters would you be interested in incorporating a game? Perhaps like would like Africa or the Pacific be like viable options for decisive campaigns?
Maybe. I don't see a lot of limitations for people who want to use the editor of Decisive Campaigns for, provided it doesn't involve ships. You should be able to do a lot of different stuff. And the future of the engine, everything is possible, but I'm not going to disclose on that yet. Though I think Pacific, you can rule that out. It's you never know, but I never much liked the Pacific to model the Pacific. I don't know enough of it personally, and there's a lot of interaction between air and naval power and amphibious forces. It's a bit it's a special case of combat simulation. But Africa, honestly, I think the T engine is very apt for Africa. It might be an interesting topic for some future content. Especially the absence of the front lines. It would work well with an Africa scenario.
Oh, wow. So this question is the only question I'll probably come from me, and nobody else will probably ask it at least on Developer Dialogue. Mainly because I'm a Linux Mac kind of guy, so I wanted to ask. In the future, do you is there any possibility? I know Ardennes Offensive is going to be Windows only, but I'm kind of curious. In the future, would you be interested in incorporating like Linux or Mac? Is that a possibility in the future?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not a possibility in the near future. And it's just because. I don't like to have the extra support work for multiple systems. I already have multiple games, which is a lot of support work. And the moment I go to multiple systems, I'm afraid one might multiply the other in the level of support needed. And seeing that at the moment, I think the Apple market and the Linux market are really much smaller than the PC market. It's a choice of comfort for me to focus on one, and I prefer to focus on the biggest one.
Yeah, I think Mac.
I'm sorry, Jean. It's very harsh, but
no, it's fine. Totally understand. Most developers want to concentrate on one platform, but the one question I had, and I guess this kind of incorporates also the mobile platform. Would be like if, let's say, another, I guess, company, a publisher or a developer came forward, like a good one would be like Feral Interactive, that they port like PC games to mobile. They just recently did like Company of Heroes. Would that be something that you would be interested in? Like if a company came forward and said, hey, I want to port over Shadow Empire to, I don't know, iPad or Android. Would that interest you, or would that be a possibility?
Well, I guess it would interest me, but I don't think it's a possibility because the margins in our niche are not, I think, especially the Hex and Counter, are not big enough to be financially interesting for such a theoretical third party. I mean, the game you just mentioned, they sell in six-figure numbers, right? And I think it's interesting. This sort of cooperation is interesting with games that really sell a lot. But I don't see this happening anytime soon. But if you're maybe you're wrong. I would be interested in anybody who's interested in porting it and supporting it afterwards on a different platform. But it's a lot of work to do this and to do it well and to keep supporting it. So honestly, I don't know. I'm not very eager either to know, to share out my source code with just anybody. So
it has to be somebody really special.
Yeah, and we already discussed the market size. Like I mean, I'm making an okay living out of being a game developer, but I'm far from rich. You know, I don't have the idea that there's enough space there to get a team in there to do ports. It seems like a bit of hubris to be so ambitious. The moment, you know, I buy my second car, you know, like maybe I'll look into it, but for the moment I would say like let's just keep focused on PC, and it's not only the money, it's also like it's important. It's hard to find time to do everything, and it's important to stay focused. And the more different things you're doing, the less focused you'll be. And that's also a reason why I stick to just the PC platform, because I don't want to spread my attention all over the place, because in the end I will end up doing nothing.
Yeah, and yeah, I could totally understand. I just, you know, I a lot of times I have little ones with me, so the biggest device that I can have in my hands is pretty much a phone, or maybe if I'm lucky an iPad. And I always dream of like, man, I would love to play, you know, this game while I'm watching my kids. But hopefully, maybe in the future, you never know.
Well, that's true. We never know.
And that'll be my last question. I was wondering before we kind of finish off the interview, is there anything that I didn't cover that you wanted to add into the interview?
No, I think we gave a good impression of a Decisive Campaigns that has had many changes and some very interesting ones. And I think we have to wait till maybe the game is out to I don't know. At the moment, I would say like this was a good overview, and maybe we can talk again when the game is out.
Which I think is 2021, right?
It's aimed for this year, and I hope rather sooner than later. I don't want to delay too much, but I don't want to rush it either. So, but let's hope. Let's hope it will be somewhere in the direction of May, June.
Oh wow! If you do, I'm gonna have a heart attack. Just let me know.
I
hope. Because everything you said about this game is like a dream. But yeah, I can't wait to get my hands on it. And thank you for doing it. I mean, there's like 2 blockbuster games you already came out with in basically the span of 1 year. If you get it before the summer's over. So thank you for that, and thank you for coming on. I would love to have you back on the show to discuss it when you release it. And yeah, thanks again for coming on the show.
It's been my pleasure, Jean. It was it's nice to talk to you. Let's keep in touch, and I'll speak to you later.
Awesome, definitely.